whakarongo ki te tangi a te korimako. Kōrero flowing out the hooker force. Kaupapa relevant, kaupapa out of bounds, kaupapa exigent, kaupapa paramount. Nā kona whakapiri mai ki te kaupapa tino whakahira whakarongo pi kari mai. Hare mai, o Taringa hare mai. We gotta gather up close everybody. Gather up close everybody. Kani move that body. Kani move that body.
E ngā iwi katoa, tēnā rā koutou. Nau mai hoki mai.
Morena e te whānau.
E morena. Nau mai hoki mai ki tēnei te Punua Pāho podcast. Te wānanga o te roa, ara ko tā tātou podcast. Ko
Taringa.
Taringa, are mai o koutou Taringa. And we are in Te Iwi o Te Wiki.
Te Iwi o Te Wiki this week.
Yes, and we are very, very lucky because this special guest of ours, who's a very good friend of mine, and he tuahine nōku, tino hoa tēnei ki au tariao, and we're very, very lucky because we're biting into her holiday time. So we've gone international e Te Iwi. We're Skyping across Te Moana Nui a Kiwa aue, all the way to Hawaii, to Waikiki. Coming from the Banyan in Waikiki, we have Ms. Hana O'Regan e te tuahine e mihi atu ana ki a koe. Tēnā koe.
Mihi mai rā. Ko tērā te reo waiata o Moana reo Māori. Nā tēnā koutou, tēnā kōrua.
Tēnā koe. We've had Ngāti Rangi Nui.
Ngāti Rangi.
Ngāti Maniapoto.
Ngāti
Toa. And we're going all around the motu, e te iwi. Yes, very lucky to have Hana with us this morning. And e mihi nui ana kia koe te tuahine. Thank you very much for giving up a bit of your holiday time there. How is the weather in Hawaii?
Kai ruka no atu. Well, e harei te mea he rite ki te Waipounamu. It's a little bit different from the south, I believe, but it's absolutely gorgeous.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Wow, tāwatahi tēnā e te tuahine. And e te iwi, you know, I don't get, when people say to get a tan, I don't get a tan. Maoko Hana, I get red as well. So, and Hana Skyped in, and she decided not to wear her bikini on our Skype session.
No, kei te mau, e kei te huna I tēnei haora.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wai hota ni ki a huna ana. No reire te tuahine. As you know, we've asked you on Taringa this morning to talk about tō rahi, tō iwi, a Kai Tahu.
Ka pai.
And I think a lot of our listeners, we've got thousands of followers actually that have been listening to our podcast. And for the general public, a lot of them may not know where Kai Tahu is. So maybe you can share a little bit about the tribal area of Kai Tahu.
Ka pai, well, tēnā no kōrua. So our tribal rohe is Te Waipounamu, so we're from the South Island, but we don't claim all of the South Island. We leave all that beautiful wine-growing area up in the top, Te Tauihu o Te Waka. Our ancestors decided to go to the colder climate and move further south. So there's a big wedge at the top of the south that belongs to the iwi of Te Tauihu, but pretty much south of Kahuraki Point on the west coast, and Te Pariwhakatau, just north of kaikōrero on the eastern coast, everything, and then in the middle, so you would do a little triangle and you come to a place, Rakitoto, the lake there, everything south of that is our rohe. So yeah, it stretches down both coasts right down. And of course down to Rakiura and the islands, the Muttonbird Islands, the Titi Islands down south too.
Oh, they're so titi. Yeah.
Yes, the Titi. Kātaki te Titi.
Kātangi te Titi, and you know, we've got a big connection at Koroneihana to Titi because that's where the Titi tent is.
Yeah. Yes, Titi tent.
And they go through hundreds of Titi every year. We might talk about Titi a bit later. But that's a huge rohe e te tuahine.
It is, and it's a huge rohe, not because there's millions and millions of us. We are, I think we're the fourth largest tribe in I Roti Tau Māori, in the Māori world. And so there's about 58,000 of us that are on our register. Some more on the census, but that's on our tribal register. But the reason why it's such a big rohe is because, as you can imagine, there's a lot of that which is uninhabitable. We've got the whole Southern Alps running down Te Tuara, the backbone of the South Island. And it's harsher living. So we couldn't grow traditionally our tupuna. There's only a few places that they could grow the kumara. And as we know, our people settled in places where they had sustainable kai all year round. And of course, one of the things that our people, Māori, all around the country lived off, with their staple was the kumara. So if you can't grow the kumara, then you got to do something else. So our people actually had a culture of more seasonal migration around the rohe. So it was a much more nomadic culture, and that changed everything around even our style of houses, the way we lived, how we interacted. And that's why really we had such a big rohe.
I find a lot of things interesting about, every iwi, but as you're referring to the difference in housing, and that's something I learnt when I was down there on kaupapa with you guys and different things. You want to talk about the Kai Tahu style of whare, of housing?
Yep.
Traditionally.
Yeah, so, we still had a couple of the standard houses that you might expect to see in the north as well, of the typical style of wharenui, but generally there are only a few of them, and there was one in Kaikōrero at Takahanga Pā, another one in Arowhenua near Timuka or Timaru, and another one near that we know of. These that go back a long time at Kaiapoi Pā as well. But generally the whare were a lot smaller, and they could be set up quickly and taken down as well. But we also had what's commonly known as the wharero, and a wharero is a round house. When we visited, brother, our relations over in America, the First Nations over there, some of their tribes, even the Mohicans, and they had these round houses which look very similar to the Kai Tahu houses of old. And so they were called the wharero. And of course, one of the reasons they're called the wharero is because they had the Nico and the reeds and the Nico palms, the leaves around, and used the ro as a protection. Not unlike our other houses, it was just the style. They made the structure by bending the vines, more the bendy wood, and they would make that like an igloo kind of look. It looks like an igloo, but, e hara I te hukapapa, not out of snow. So, yeah, and they were dug in a little bit to the ground, but I think the houses in the north were too. But that's also from the insulation. It does get pretty cold in the south. And even their art. So we didn't have a lot of traditional carvings in the way that, because you develop art when you've got downtime. This is where our culture, our people had a time for fighting. I'm talking about Māori in general. Yes. Time for fighting, time for planting, time for doing their art. And usually the time that you can develop art is when you've got downtime. Right, and basically when you're in a hunting, gathering culture, when you're in a culture of seasonal migration, you don't have that same transportability of your mahi whakairo and those kind of things. So weaving, absolutely, because you did that on the road as well, but we didn't have that strong culture of carved, popo, era ahua tako te whakairo. But we did have rock art, because that's what you do when you're travelling, and those kind of things. That's why I say the culture is quite different. We still have our carved canoes. We decorated our canoes in that. But yeah, quite different.
Tēnā koe. As you're talking about travelling and the culture of Kai Tahu, and I heard, you referred to the South Island as Te Waipounamu. And I thought it might be interesting if you could talk a little bit about the Pounamu culture within Kai Tahu, or the greenstone we're talking about at the iwi, if I whakarongo mai nā to our listeners.
You mean there are people out there that don't know what Pounamu is? Okay, yeah, well, it is a culture, but all of our Pounamu comes from the West Coast. Te Tai Poutini is our name. Poutini is the taniwha, the guardian of the Pounamu. So Te Tai o Poutini, Te Tai Poutini is the coast of Poutini. And that's where our Pounamu is. And it goes right down you can go into Fiordland and up into the hills in there, and you can get different kinds of Pounamu from around there. Pio Tahi, Milford Sound, but pretty much, it's a West Coast thing going on. And the first person to bring an example of Pounamu from the West Coast over to Kai Tahu living over in the East Coast was a lady by the name of Raureka. And Raureka, she was a mountaineer as well. We've got one of our alpine passes named after her, Te Nuti o Raureka, and Nuti is an alpine pass. She brought these little tauka over, and she had them in her purse. And she showed the people on the East Coast, Kai Tahu, she said, oh, look, this is what I use. These are my tools. And she pulled out her tools of pounamu. And, of course, people hadn't seen them before. And that created a desire to go over and get more of this pounamu. And so we had this commerce, really, that happened from the East Coast to the West Coast. And literally like a season of going over the Alps to get the pounamu and bring it back. Pounamu is the hardest stone in New Zealand. And the only thing that can cut it is diamond, which, of course, we weren't too familiar with back then. Our bling was our pounamu. But you can process it by using sandstone, literally wearing it down. And it's a long, hard task, amazing skills. And so the people on the West Coast were the kōrātou ka tuki ki ēnei mahi. They were the experts and they were the holders of that knowledge of processing our pounamu. So, yeah, even when the Pākehā came in, they bought gold and they bought all these other things. You know, our people were still warring over pounamu because it was so highly prized as not just something that was great for tools, you know, with our mere pounamu and our what do you call those? Karako te riri, hahaera? Weapons, our weapons and for blades and those kind of things. It was also prized because of the mana and te wairua, te mauri roto, the spiritual essence that it carried with it as a kaitiaki. Yeah, that's our culture. It's still very important to us. And the people on the West Coast, the Kāti Waiwai people or Ngāti Waiwai people, that's their life. Pounamu is them, you know, ko rātou tonu te pounamu. It's who they are as a people. And I say that, you know, I whakapapa to Kāti Waiwai as well, and it's pretty awesome.
I think of, you know, a lot of our whakatauki, which remind us of the value of pounamu, such as ahakoa he iti he pounamu. So even though it's but small, it is made of pounamu.
And you know, our one is te kopa iti a raureka. So ahako he iti, ko te kopa iti a raureka. So even though it's small, it is the prized purse of raureka. So there you go.
Te kopa iti a raureka.
Che, ka pai koe. You can say that whakatauki just by saying te kopa iti a raureka. Nāia te kopa iti a raureka. Here, because nāia is one of our other sayings to say, like, here it is when you're presenting something to someone. Nāia. You can go, nāia te kopa iti a raureka. Here, I present you, I give you the small purse of raureka.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
I know too with pounamu, you know, it was handed down through generations, and then, you know, there's lots of stories about mere pounamu that were swapped or were used as dowry or to seal contracts, and or tatau pounamu to seal peace between iwi. And as the pounamu travelled, it was endowed with more mana through the years, neha.
Aye.
So there's lots of kōrero about that.
I think because our people valued it so much, and like all of our art and our tauka, it carries the messages and the stories of every generation it passes through. So I think that's why it becomes even more, you know, even more special in our hearts and our minds, because it is really a vehicle that becomes the repository of those narratives of our whānau. So my taua's pounamu, she had a tiki, and that went to my sister Rena, who's the eldest in the whānau. And we had a lot of our tauka stolen when we lived in Wellington. A lot of our family heirlooms were we got robbed a number of times and stolen. But this tiki of taua's, you know, that's it's special. You look at it and you know that I didn't meet my taua. Taua is the Kai Tahu word for grandmother. She died before I was born. So being able to see that and touch that is a connection to her. You know, I made sure I've got 2 tamariki, and I bought them a tiki each that is made from the same stone, because I want that to be an heirloom for them that can be passed down through their whānau. But that also unites them to me, and because of that importance of te rā hei te kia toku taua, then I can make that connection back to them. So yeah, I think the mana of the tauka, and where that effect that it gets imbued with those stories of each generation helps us to connect, connect to the past, but also connect to our babies, our mokopuna.
Tēnā koe. Tino pai. I think something too I want to touch on, Tuahine, just to wrap up the kōrero about pounamu is, a lot of people think that, I know pounamu is probably the umbrella kupu for the different types of pounamu, of jade, is it jade? And there's also there's other kupu, there's other ingoa words for pounamu and the types of. Could you share a couple of those, please?
Yeah, sure. So, I'm not proclaiming to be an expert here, otherwise those Katiwaiwai relations of mine will be giving me a talking to. But actually, look, we've got a number of different ones that we can use as kiwaha too. So we say, for instance, te kuru auhuka. So auhuka is a kind of pounamu, and we use te kuru auhuka, which is the flint of auhuka, as a term of endearment for beauty, or somebody prized. So you say, e taku kuru auhuka, my precious auhuka, greenstone. And te kuru tekarerewa is another form. But we have things, the common ones, sometimes you see the lighter one. It's kind of like more milky. It's kind of got a milky kind of green to it.
Yeah.
And that's called inaka or inanga. Now you can see that because if you know the inanga, the white bait, it's got that kind of translucent, that milky colour. That's one of our pounamu is inaka. We've got toto weka. It's got the toto weka. It's got the red flecks through it, so that's like the blood of the weka going through toto weka. Takiwai or tangiwai is another one. And in our traditions, that's when Tama'awa cried, and he cried when he realised that his wife Waitaiki, who's the mother of pounamu, had been turned to stone. His tears fell and became takiwai, that fell to his in the river. So. Yeah, lots of kōrero and kupu around the different kinds of greenstone, but in the different kinds of pounamu. Not, he nui te whānau, he nui te momo.
Kia ora. I have to say, Tario, it's quite strange for me to hear Hana say tangiwai.
Yeah.
I know. Weird for me too. I'm trying.
Yeah. And she's really, really trying. And I know it's for the benefit of the audience. And I think we're naturally sort of going that way now because Hana's used some Kai Tahu kupu. Kai Tahu, I'm going to try and Kai Tahu I taku reo.
Ka pai.
Yeah.
O koia kai a koe tukane.
Yeah, and I was saying to Tariao Tuhine, you remember that one year we, the first Te Panekiretanga trip, and we all swapped mita.
Oh.
Do you remember that? And we had to pay $1 every time we stuffed up a mita.
I know. That was a good fundraising night that night.
For dinner. It was for dinner.
And, honestly, you would have thought that I would have had it easy because all I had to do was use the NG. I wasn't allowed to use the Kai Tahu mita. And yet, the Heketu was having to use the Kai Tahu mita. And between him and I had the hardest. We ended up being fined more than anyone else. And it was a pretty hard case trip, that one.
Yeah.
But yes, I learnt my reo in the North Island, so I went to Te Wiki and learnt te reo just, in high school there, up in Auckland. And I also had Te Aue Davis from Ngāti Maniapoto, who I spent a lot of time with since I was 6. So I learnt reo in that way, but it was all northern reo. And I was 16 before I wanted to try and use a bit more or learn a bit more about our dialect. And so I've been trying somewhat successfully, somewhat not since then. And I made a real commitment when I went to university just to try and use our dialect. But yeah, our dialect is a bit different. I remember when you started listening to it, Paraone, and you were like, what? Ha ha, ha ha. I had to say things 3 times. I'm thinking, man, is my reo that bad that he's not getting me? And then it takes a while to get used to, but I think once people are used to hearing it, then it's not so bad, eh, brother?
Yeah. So just to share with everybody the general Ngai Tahu mita, and maybe Hana can share with us whether all of Ngai Tahu speaks like that, but they drop the NG or the NG becomes a K. So you've heard Hana say inaka for inanga, and she's been saying tauka. And quite naturally too.
Yeah.
And I take my hat off to you, Te Tuhine, nui taku mihi ki a koe, because you're ka nifa koe ki tō mita, you're very staunch to your mita, but it rolls off your tongue quite naturally. You don't force your tō mita. And he tohu tērā ki au kua tangata whenua tō rangi e ki nei a tainui, te rangi o te reo, te mita o te reo ki runga ki tō arero, no rere mihata ana kia koe. So that's probably the basic one. But I know there's a lot of Ngai Tahu kupu too, or Kai Tahu kupu.
Kai Tahu.
Or kupu Kai Tahu, more correctly.
Yeah.
Which is, you've heard a couple ne, te anga hea, te aka.
Te aka.
Tari au te aka.
Ai.
Hea he tahi o ngā kupu kua rongo koe.
Ngā kupu.
Ko
Te
putai
noti.
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 No tika pai.
Mo te kuia.
Te taua.
Taua. So taua for grandmother.
Ko te taua, he tohu tō.
Kari he tohu tō.
Taua.
Taua.
Yeah.
And then we hit for anei.
Nāia.
Or naia.
Nāia. Yeah, he kiwaha tērā, ka pai. You know, brother, it didn't always roll off my tongue. It took a while. But like, te reo never rolled off my tongue either. It took a while when I was learning te reo. You know, it didn't come naturally. It was hard work when you're learning a language and that hasn't been the language you've been raised in. So like the same for me, it was another transition to learn the mita. But I wanted to, because when I looked at my place names down south, like Aoraki for our mountain, for Mount Cook, Aoraki, and Rakiura, the places where I came from, my marae at Moiraki, you know, which is the same place as Moirangi. I like, there's something, that this was the reo that was left by my tupuna, and I wanted to do it. I wanted to do it justice. But you asked me the question whether or not all of Ngai Tahu speak in the mita, and no, they don't. Not all of my iwi speak Māori. In fact, we're the iwi that are struggling the most of all iwi in terms of language loss. And so it's been a big part of my rakahau, my rangahau, my research as well, to look at, well, hey, why did it change? Why was it different for us and it was for others? And when did our mita start changing? Because it's hard case when you start looking at some of the old manuscripts and you see the old people trying to write, and what they were learning was the standard way of speaking Māori, and they're getting it mixed up. It is hard case. You know, so for a word like that, they start thinking that every time that they would say a K, it's meant to be an NG. So they start trying to write it like ngaraka for karanga. And because they say, oh, that must be an NG, so I changed that one, and they're just getting it mixed. But they were trying because they wanted to try and conform to the written Māori, which was new to our people. So they would, and that the written Māori was all in the northern form. And when our language started being lost, then of course you lose the mita as well. So when I was in 2011 on December the 5th, 2011, our last native poa, Uncle Jacko Reihana, native speaker of our dialect, he died. And so we didn't have a big group of people who were using the language and showing us how to use, you know, what that mita sounded like. So a lot of our people for generations now have grown up only what Māori they have heard has been Northern. It hasn't been our form. And I understand that that's what they feel comfortable with, and that's what's common, so they want to learn it. And a lot of our people also have multiple iwi, so they go with an iwi, the language that's stronger. But for me, it's been a big thing for me to do. I kind of think no one else is going to take responsibility for our mita, for our rangi, as you call it, than us. So I want to make sure that I can look my mukapuna in the eye and say, well, I did what I could, you know, to try and at least raise the awareness about it, and also see the beauty. Because, you know, there are some things in the south that they don't have in the north. So we've got kupu down. I remember with Papa Timoti having a conversation, hearing him say one time, the Māori didn't have a word for glacier. And I'm like, I think they did. I think, you know, and he was wonderful because he was like, well, what is it? And I had to think, oh, hold on, what is it? And then, you know, in our story with of Rākai Hautu, who came with the Waitaha people, he was the leader of the Waitaha people. He had a pepeha that said, he puna kari kari, he puna waimaria, he puna hauaitu. And it was a prophecy that when he turned up in Nelson, he dug his core to whakaroria into the ground. And he said, and he prophesied, he saw three kinds of puna, three kinds of lakes. They were the lakes kari kari, so we use for kiri kiri, for digging, we use kari kari. So he puna kari kari, there'll be lakes dug by the hand of man. He puna waimaria, there'll be lakes that are he puna huhua. There'll be bountiful lakes, plentiful lakes, rich with kai, and he puna hauai too, and frozen lakes, and that's our glacier. You know, so hauai too is freezing, absolutely freezing. So the frozen lakes, he puna hauai too. So yeah, I think the language emerged from our climate, even though Papa Timoti said that it was probably because the teeth were chattering so much down south that the come out. I like to think it was a little bit deeper than that. And actually, and I should say that the mita, that the K is one aspect of it, but that actually comes from the Waitaha, from our first, we're made up of three main migrations, and the first main migration was the Waitaha people led by Kai Tahu. They were the first ones really, and other hapu that came at the same time, but they were the people that settled. And then after that, Kati Mamoi, and they came from the East Coast. He whanauka kia kahukunu, kati kahukunu me era iwi, and they came through. And then afterwards, probably 100, 200 years after, maybe 100 years between all these migrations, then came Kai Tahu or Ngai Tahu from again the whanauka from the East Coast. And of course that was from the Te Ra Honoka kia Ngāti Porou, our relationship to Ngāti Porou as well. And so Waitaha, the K, when the Kati Mamoi came, they brought with them some of those eastern aspects of dialect, like the mātou instead of mātou, and tātou, so the AU instead of the OU on the end of all those pronouns. They brought them, and the Waitaha people adopted that language, but they kept the K. And when the Ngai Tahu came, they did the same thing. So we can actually see in the dialect before the Pākehā arrived, we can see the East Coast influence, the Waitaha influence, and it merged to a reo. And the reo that I use, the mita that I use in terms of that timeline, is the language our people were speaking before our language started to be eroded by the arrival of the Pākehā. That's where I put my stake in the ground on my timeline and say, if I'm going to revitalise a language, I want to revitalise it at the time that we were in control. So yeah, we share a lot of the same similarities with Ngāti Porou, Kahungunu, and the mita in those places. Yeah. Sorry, that's a long lecture for a little question.
No, Paira Wata, I think you're inspirational e te tuahine. One is your second language learner. You took it upon yourself to learn te reo Māori. And then secondly, to learn your rangi, or te mita o tō reo, and it's become a part of you, a natural part of you. And Tariao and I, we had a conversation about how important mita is, but if you're on a language learning journey, if you're out of your tribal area, you can learn te reo Māori, and then in time you can learn your mita.
Absolutely, yep. And I pēra hoki au, that's what I did.
Yeah, and you're a role model and an example of that. And thirdly, you've been highly involved and engaged with the revival of te reo Māori within your iwi, in the language strategy of your iwi, tahi mano kaika.
Ana.
I'm good at tahi mano kaika.
Ding ding. Yeah, ko tahi mano kaika, we're 15 years, actually coming into our 16th year since we launched that kaupapa. But it was 1997 that so 20 years actually, far out, 20 years. 20 years since we first thought it up. It took us a couple of years to get it past our tribal governance, to get it supported. And that was that the whakatauki is ko tahi mano kaika, ko tahi mano wawata, 1,000 homes realising 1,000 aspirations. And that acknowledged that everyone's going to have a different goal, a different dream for their reo. It doesn't have to look the same. And so we wanted 1,000 homes making good on their dreams for their reo within their whānau. And we got that kaupapa. It was influenced by Joshua Fishman, Professor Joshua Fishman, the late professor, little Jewish professor over in Harlem, over in New York. And he had a huge influence on language, people revitalizing languages around the world, because he said the most important thing that's going to change the status of a language is if you speak it at home, if you speak it in between generations. So we call it the intergenerational transmission of the reo. And that's what we based our kaupapa on. So it's been a long journey. Of course, I was a big preacher of it. I went around preaching it around my tribe, saying to people, shaking them up, saying, come on, you got to do this. Then I had my own children. I went, wow, this is hard. Really. And I took my hat off to all those people that I've been lecturing to for years before that and who had really made the commitment, because I thought, I've got a level of reo which has been developed to a point. It's still got a long way to go. But I found it hard. So for people who are just starting and doing it with their kids, I really took my hat off to them. But the rewards, wow. And I think this is what inspires people. When you hear your baby's first kupu and they come out in te reo, and you hear their first waiata and it's te reo, when they make their first sentence and it's in te reo, when they growl you for the first time, or and it's in te reo, even when they swear at you, it's like, they're speaking te reo. I remember my boy did that. He was 2 years old and we were on a plane. He was hoha with me, really hoha, because I wouldn't let him get out. And he goes, he swore at me. He swore at me in te reo. And he'd learnt it off the Paki Waituhi, off one of the cartoons, the early cartoons we had in Māori. So I can pay tribute to Waihoroi Shortlive for this one. But he goes, Kaya te kuri mama, food of the dog mama. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that little fucker, swearing at me. How dare he? And I went, it sounds so good when he says it in Māori. And so I kind of had a little bit of a smirk, which he did not appreciate. And so he turned to me and there's a lady walking down the aisle and she had a banana and he goes, he was trying to think of something else and he goes, Kaya te rāpiti mama, rabbit mama. And I'm like, that's not a kiwaha. When did that kiwaha get invented? And then I thought, actually, that's really cool. He's making up. Yeah. He's making up his own little kiwaha, even if he is trying to swear at his mother. And so I said, I didn't pay any attention, but I kind of couldn't help but laugh. Until then, he goes, Kaya te banana mama, your food of the banana mum. And I went, and of course I couldn't help it. I just laughed and that just sent him off. Although he laughed as well because he realised that the banana doesn't actually have a food. So, he kind of cracked himself up, but then he got even more angry. So, yeah, when you first hear your babies use the reo like that and live it, really live it, it's worth all the hard work. And I think for my people, I want my the next generation of Kai Tahu to not feel whakamā about not having the reo. It's hard. It doesn't make you less Māori, but it helps you to understand the Māori world and the kōrero of our ancestors when you do know more. And so I just want that for my mokopuna. I want that for my whānau and my relations. I want them to feel connected to their stories, connected to their place. It's such a beautiful thing when you listen to it. And I think like any parent, when you know there's some beauty and richness and so much strength that can be got from something, you don't want to deny it to your children. You want to do what you can to help them have it. And it's going to be a hard slog. And for our people in Kai Tahu, with so many who don't and so many who don't even have a memory of it being spoken. It's really hard. What can you do so that you can make sure that your tamariki and your mokopuna will have access to it in the future? Doesn't have to be now, but it's what you do now that will make a difference for the future generation. So, I just think it's something, and the same goes for the dialect. I think it's something we need to work on. We want to make sure that our babies, we want to make sure that our uri, our descendants, know the beauty and the richness and the legacy that our tupuna gave. So I'm going to carry on rocking it out, whether my kids like it or not. and there are times that they don't believe me when I'm going, kōrero Māori, kia kaha, me uki tō reo Māori. And I'm always telling them to stick to the Māori, and if they speak English to me, they don't get an answer. That infuriates the hell out of them. But you got to bite the bullet sometimes, and I'm pretty sure that they're going to appreciate it when they're when they have their babies and they realise, that there are those opportunities. So my taua was born in 1900. She was born in 1900, and she didn't speak Māori as her first language. It was her parents that were native speakers, and that far back, that's freaky. And so it's been over 100 and You know, it was over 100 years in my family that the language wasn't spoken. And my children, though, are first language speakers of Māori. It's still got a lot to be fixed up because I've been their teacher. But I reckon my taua would have been pretty damn proud to think that despite what was lost then, her great mokopuna are now naturally speaking te reo.
Tēnā rā atu koe te tuahine. I've been waiting for te anga... why would I say... Okay. Tō ingoa whānau. Tō ingoa whānau. I've been waiting for Tariao to come in, but she's just like in awe
I'm
of
like
you.
in awe and
She's like
captivated.
sitting there like...
Don't lie, you were sleepy. That's what the issue
No, she is. She's like in awe of you. And mea tahi, I mean, ahakoa taku mōhio ki a koe. Ko te wātua tahi tēnei ko āta noho tāua. Ahakoa kai Hawaii koe and kai te kāinga nei au. But that I've really got to hear your whakaaro e pāna ki te whakatupu tamariki me te whakatupu reo. And erua, bringing up children and growing te reo community, the reo community, erua. Nō reira e te tuahine mihi atu ana. I know this is going to be a huge inspiration for our listeners because a lot of our listeners, most of them are on a te reo journey and they're all at different parts in their journey. But te reo won't come with just sitting there doing nothing. You need to put the hard work into te reo Māori.
Right.
But you'll get the benefits. And that's the fourth inspirational point about you that I wanted to bring up is that you're also an example of that. So, e te tuahine ka mātua I tēnā. Thank you very, very much. E mihi atu ana ki a koe mau I whakawāte I a koe I tō wā hararei. Just to remind everybody, Hana's actually in Hawaii on the in Waikiki.
And do you know the hotel that I'm staying in, the tower, they got 2 tower blocks, and I thought it was a tohu because on the sign when I'm coming in, the name of this tower block is Mocha.
There you go.
It's like a dialect. It's Mocha. He tohu, brother.
Just so you know, Mocha in Hawaii means mauta, all right? So, you know, just I don't want to burst
I'm just going with Mocha. Just don't be popping my balloon over here.
Don't be popping that poeho. Hoi anō e te tuhine e mihi atu ana ki a koe. Māua tai me te wānanga o te roa ki a koe mau I whakawāte I a koe. And I'll let you get out into that nice sunshine I can see is
beautiful.
reflecting off the white walls of your hotel rooms. Hotel room there.
Of the Mocha Tower.
Me aku mehi nui ki a koe, me ngā manakitanga ki runga ki a kouta katoa e noho mai nā I tā wahi Hawaii. Kia pai te noho ki kona, kia Māori ori te noho. And kia kouta katoa e te iwi e whakarongo mai nā. That was Hana O'Regan no Kai Tahu, e kōrero ana mo tōna iwi. And this is us.
Ai.
Maua ko Tariao. E mihi atu ana kia koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
That kōrero was mean.
Was eh?
Yeah.
I saw you were like, as I was saying, you were just...
Yeah. I was just like captivated. I was like, oh my God.
Me too. As I was saying, you know, e harai te mea ka noho, koe tino hoa mā, we're really good friends, but it's not often...
You can just sit and...
Yeah, and talk that I've really heard about her whakaaro and bringing up her tamariki, that I also know really well. And to hear, I think one thing is hearing the viewpoint of a mother. So even though the kōrero was about Kai Tahu, we went into her work in te reo Māori and the mahi she's done in te reo Māori and particularly in her whānau and bringing up her children in te reo, which I thought was really, really cool and good for our listeners. Koutou e te iwi, neha. And the tana u ki tana mita.
Ai, I tino rongo, me te pai hoki.
Yeah.
E a tāhua te mita ki au.
Yeah, and there's not many that, I mean, you know, I've got a few friends from Kai Tahu, but she is staunch to her mita, but it's quite natural.
Yeah.
How she speaks it. I mean, I know quite a few people no iwike, and they'll speak their mita some of the time. But as we were saying, you know, I roto I a tāua kōrero about mita the other day, you need to be around it for it to become a natural part of your way of speaking. And yeah, that's harder if you live out of your iwi. But it was good to hear her, you know, say, you know, don't get, it's you know, you can learn your mita later. So yeah, he nui ngā mātauranga I roto I tērā kōrero mō Kai Tahu. And e tahi o a rātou kupu.
Ai.
Neha.
Tino pai.
Tino pai rā wātu. so koina, ku whakai whakaro anō mo tā tātou kōrero.
No, it was just beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's I think it sort of like was bringing it back home for everybody listening. It's like, yep, you can do this too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And,
it's going to be hard, but...
I know maybe a lot of you, our listeners, may not know who Hana O'Regan is, but you can Google her. But, you know, she's one that's done a lot of work in te reo Māori for Ngai Tahu and te iwi Māori, not just Ngai Tahu. So we've been honoured really with all of our guests we've
definitely.
had on Taringa. But it was another thing, I'm just going back to te rongo I te reo o te wahine. E tino paira wātu. Tino paira wātu.
Ko ia pia te wahine tuatahi.
Ai, koe te wahine tuatai atu i a koe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But, yeah. You're on every week, so.
Yeah. Ka moha pia e nei ki taku reo.
Hoi anō e te iwi, koe nā e tahi o māua huritau, and it's kupu hou for you all. Huritau means to reflect. Huritau. And just to go back, some of the kupu from our kōrero with Hana. So we had kopa.
Kopa, purse.
Which is a purse, ki te reo o Kai Tahu. Kai Tahu, Ngai Tahu.
E taua and paua.
Taua for grandmother and paua for grandfather. We had puna hau aitu.
Is
that for glacier?
For glacier.
Yep.
Kari.
Kari instead of kiri.
Kiri for digging.
Yeah, I think there were some others too that came out just in the conversation that we didn't really necessarily talk about, but they came out in the kōrero.
Yeah.
So yeah, koina, he nui ngā akoranga I roto I tērā kōrero, and I just want to reflect again on Hana being a second language learner and the hard work that she's put in. And it is a hard slog. So for those of you that are learning te reo, well, we're all learning te reo. You know, even though I class myself as a fluent speaker.
It's never ending.
Exactly. And that's the reason why I like doing Mahuru Māori, is because I learn a lot of new words doing Mahuru Māori. So kia kaha te ako, kia u. And be patient. A lot of the time it's being patient with yourself.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and learning to manage those emotions you go through when you're learning te reo Māori.
In any language, really, yeah.
Koina hoki. Of course, another way to learn te reo, a good way, a fun way, is through waiata. So that leads us into our waiata o Te Wiki.
Ai.
It is...
E papa waiari.
E papa waiari.
Yeah.
Hei koina tātātou waiata. I tēnei wiki, whakarongo mai.
E hine hoki mai a E papa waiari Taku nei mahi Hei tūku roi mata E au e Ka mate ahau E hine hoki mai rā E hine hoki mai rā Maku e kau te o hiko I tanga Maku e kau te o hiko I tanga E au e Ka mate ahau E hine hoki mai rā E papa waiari Taku nei mahi Hei tūku roi mata E au e Ka mate ahau E hine hoki mai rā E hine hoki mai rā E hine hoki mai rā
So that was our waiata, and that was NRG Rising singing that. Benita and her 2 daughters.
Another favourite party song, E Papa Waiari.
Right.
I remember doing it back in primary school with Roll Up magazines.
Oh, yes.
As Titi Torea,
Right.
the stick game. And then in high school, we sang it a cappella. Our music teacher, she taught us how to sing it a cappella like
I
Herbs.
remember it at One Love when Fiji sang it. Did you see the video?
No, I haven't.
Oh,
I'm gonna
at
look
One
it up
Love
now.
last year, Fiji sang it. It was cool, but I fell asleep.
Oh, well.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So that's sort of in line with you for
yeah. this
sleeping
one.
through your alarm this morning.
Yeah. Yeah.
She slept through her pū oho e te iwi. There is another kupu hou for you all. Pū oho alarm. Hoi anō, we're signing off now e te iwi. Hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Punua Pāho Taringa, recorded in-house te ipurau, te wānanga o te roa. E rere nei a māua mihi ko tari ao kia koutou katoa.
Hei kona e te iwi.
Bit whakaronga pi kari kari. Gather up close everybody buddy. Taringa, taringa, taringa. Yeah, tahuri mai ki o. Whakarongo ki te tangi a te korimako. Kōrero flowing out the hooker force. Kaupapa relevant, kaupapa out of bounds. Kaupapa exigent, kaupapa paramount. Nā kona whakapiri mai ki te kaupapa tino whakahira hira. Whakarongo pi kari kari mai. Hare hare mai, o taringa hare hare mai. We gotta gather up close everybody. Gather up close everybody. Kani move that body. Kani move that body.
Taringa, he mea tuku nā te wānanga o Aotearoa. To listen to more episodes, search for us on your podcast app and subscribe. Taringa, whakarongo mai.